Welcome back, all you luminous beings temporarily housed in crude matter, to Justin B's Intro into Magic, where I give you the broad strokes and general outline of the occult arts by using my art and my eclectic magical experiences. In this episode, we will wrestle with the power of the will in magic, as well as cover the process in actually performing a magical ritual. So, let's begin episode 8. So, what is the will? The dictionary definition states that it is control exerted to do something or restrain impulses to be able to resist short term gratification in order to achieve certain objectives. It's the ability to choose and act. It's a part of the mind that urges us towards action. Franz Barden, in Initiation to Hermetics, describes the will as one of the four fundamental attributes of the spirit or mind, and it takes this power from the divine will, omnipotence. Of course, this is all related to the fire element. So, this fiery will of the divine, like a bright shining sun, your will is a ray of light from that sun. Your will is part of the divine will. There is a long philosophical debate on whether we have free will, which is the capacity to choose between possible courses of action unimpeded, and the concept of destiny or the divine will. And we've learned in these 8 episodes about astrology and divination, which sort of gives the idea that our actions are influenced, our will is influenced to certain directions and ways of doing things. So, what is the answer to this philosophical conundrum? Aleister Crowley had a concept of the true will, which kind of helped reconcile these two concepts. By using magic to discover your purpose in this life, and in knowing and aligning with that purpose, your will is free to explore and choose your methods, your art, and whatever means you would like to accomplish your objectives. The universal will that moves through all things, that is our will, and in aligning with that force in a better way, we begin to channel its power and greater methods and greater ways. It's the fact that we sort of deny that the will moving through us is actually divine will cuts us off a little bit from that power. And by going after things that are not aligned with our true purpose, we of course lose some of that power, some of that energy. So by realigning, by focusing on our purpose, by focusing on what really matters to our lives through, personal introspection, the study of our birth charts, and by performing certain magical rituals that better align us to the true will, we can better channel the divine omnipotence to enact our will. So a simple test to, see what your willpower level is a fun little practice that I call the alarm clock practice. Essentially what you do is the night before, you pick a time that you want to wake up the next morning. Let's just say 7 a.m. And before going to sleep, you just set the clear, focused, concentrated intention that you will wake up at 7 a.m. You see the alarm clock at 7 a.m. You imagine yourself springing up and feeling alive and awake, and you keep rolling this intention over and over in your mind, knowing that you will wake up at 7 a.m., as if it will happen. So then you await, you go to sleep, of course, and you see what time you wake up. A minute or two before or after is very good. It's not perfect, of course, but it shows that your will and intention is strong enough to influence action. If if it's a way off, then of course you need to build the willpower. So, how do we build our willpower? Of course, meditation asanas help with this practice by setting clear intentions about how long you will meditate and following through to that time. That builds the power of the will, as does setting certain clear goals and objectives, following through with those, denying yourself certain short-term gratifications in order to build your ability to choose and to direct your own person. There are many types of rituals, as there are many types of people. You have religious rituals, you have magical rituals, you have personal rituals that we all perform in our daily lives. Rituals are a way to accomplish certain goals. By looking at magical rituals across the world, we can see some basic foundational aspects to these rituals that for people that are, coming into magic for the first time and they don't have a magical group or order that they belong to, we can look at these basic aspects of ritual and determine how we can craft our methods and means of accomplishing our will by these practices. The first one that we'll cover is banishing or exorcisms. These are rituals that cleanse or remove certain qualities and the quantities that are in the room or area from the environment or from an object or person. Of course, there are many different banishing rituals. Some people use certain herbs like sage to burn that clear out an area. Some use the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Others have more formal sort of exorcisms from the grimoires that they use. But the essential idea is that there is a quality in the room or qualities in the room that would hamper or harm the ritual that is about to be performed. So by removing those qualities, one creates a clear, open, sacred space in order to work from, in order to practice the following rituals, or just to have a space cleared from any sort of negative influence. The next ritual practice we'll describe is invocation. Invocation is the practice where one calls a force or divine quality into your sphere of sensation. There's many different methods of doing this. Number one would be devotion, where through love and surrendering to that divine quality or principle, one washes away the limited sense of self and expands their awareness and identifies as the divine quality chosen. Usually this is done through prayer and meditation, certain other ritual practices, devoting your concentrated focus on that divinity with the divine qualities you wish to sort of absorb into your sphere of sensation. But one really does need to sort of surrender. It's not a forced sort of will act to draw these qualities in. One completely focuses their concentration on the divine, on those qualities, allowing them to have a one-pointed, ecstatic experience of those qualities. Again, cannot be forced, has to be allowed through surrender in achieving this end. Another method for invocation is by performing a dramatic sort of reenactment, by acting out and performing a role in costume, and to act as if you are that divinity. You begin to absorb those qualities within you. For an example of how this works, how many times have you sort of watched a movie or read a book and really got into a character, and you notice some of those qualities or attributes of the character rub off on your personality for a little while? That's what's that's what the aim is, or the goal is, in the dramatic reenactment of some myth or activity the god that you're focused on um, did or performed. You reenact it, thereby absorbing some of those qualities in a greater quantity into your sphere of sensation. The next method of invocation would be a calling forth or an identification of a particular part of yourself with the chosen divinity. This could be like focusing on the heart and focusing on a God of love and compassion, focusing, say, on the third eye, divinity like Vishnu, or some cosmic awareness divinity that would allow you to have a larger perspective. So essentially, you're working with the chakras or certain body parts and drawing in the divine influence related to a characteristic you wish to condense down, build a quantity of a certain quality within your sphere of sensation. Of course, each of these three practices of devotion, drama, and calling forth into yourself require certain proficiencies that you may or may not have or have to develop. There's nothing wrong with that. You choose the one that best fits at the time and you work on that, connect with the divine as best you can in your own way, and then you can work with other methods to develop proficiency in those areas. Or if you don't want to do a particular one, that's fine. The main goal is to connect with the divine, draw those qualities in to a greater quantity within yourself. The next ritual practice we will go over is evocation. Evocation is different from invocation. Invocation is a drawing in of a quality into your sphere of sensation, while evocation is drawing a quality or force of nature from the universe into a ritual room, typically into a triangle or a magic mirror, by calling this force before you and outside of your sphere of sensation. You allow a dialogue, you allow the ability to work with that spirit as an individual being. There are different types of evocation, of course. Some are more on the mental realm, where it's not a full-on physical evocation. You're just connecting with the spirit of that force or quality. Then there's the astral density level. Typically, these are the ones where you're working with a magic mirror or some other divinatory device in order to communicate with the spirit. And finally, at the master level, is full-on physical evocation. A lot of people seem to have issues with this. I can tell you that I myself have found that following the ritual procedures within the grimoires to the letter and performing it with a properly charged ritual items and a fully blessed and empowered ritual room and tools with the right incense and everything that the grimoires state you should have, you will get a better chance of physical appearance of the spirit. Now, they may appear in different ways. It may not be a fully formed body showing up in the triangle. It may be a very pronounced presence in the room, or smells, sounds, visual experiences, or it may be a physically formed being in the room. I've had all of these occur during evocation rituals. It depends on the spirit and depends on, of course, astrological timing, if you get that right, certain forces in the environment. But the better you can build up an environment in the ritual room that matches the powers and qualities of the spirit, the better able you are to perform an evocation to physical appearance. There are many different types of spirits that you can call. There's the elemental and nature spirits. These are typically thought of as like the fae or gnomes, sylphs, all these spirits of nature that you can kind of contact and help you better master the four fundamental elements of the magical universe. The next type are astrological spirits. These are spirits connected with, of course, the planets and the stars and asterisms. And we'll talk a little more about those in the next episode. Then, of course, there is necromancy, where one evokes or calls forth a human spirit or their ancestors. Again, this is not an invocation. You never draw these spirits into you during an evocation. These are spirits that you leave outside of your magical circle, your magical sphere of sensation, in typically a triangle or a magic mirror. The next ritual practice we will cover is Eucharistic magic. That is where one takes a common substance and draws the spiritual qualities desired through the subtle force into a more profound quantity into that substance. By building a condensation of the quality inside the food or drink, one then eats or drinks that food and absorbs that quality into their body, into their astral being, and into their spirit, creating a greater quantity of that quality into their sphere of sensation. Closely related to Eucharistic magic, but much different, is consecration or blessing, where one dedicates a object to a single purpose, such as talismans or ritual tools. Once again, they draw in a quality into a greater dynamic quantitative charge of subtle force into the ritual object or talisman or item that one wants to use ritually or magically. What this does is it begins to alter the probability of the quality influencing the surrounding environment or your person. So for particular amulets or talismans, it can draw a quality to you, in other words, to have certain experiences, or it can protect you and keep away certain qualities that you do not want to occur around you. And of course, with ritual tools, you'll have elemental forces charged to a greater quantity to better help in the magical ritual when working with those elements to draw in greater quantities or banish greater quantities as needed. The next type of ritual is divination. And this is the practice of using some sort of fortune-telling device, such as tarot cards, pendulum, magic mirror, crystal ball, some sort of object that allows us to read and interpret the influences of the subtle force on a given situation. The rituals in order to enter the right state of consciousness, and the actual, say, laying down of cards or certain words of power that we may chant over a magic mirror or crystal ball. All of these practices build up the ability for us to interpret and to understand how the subtle force is influencing a given situation. And of course, in terms of, say, evocation using a magic mirror, it's allowing the subtle force to condense down on the crystal ball or magic mirror in order to have a dialogue or communication with the spirit evoked. So divination can be, of course, done on its own or part of a larger ritual. The next type of ritual practice is offerings. Offerings are certain food items or incense or just condensed energy that we give to divinities or spirits that we're working with or our ancestors as a gift, as an offering, as payment for work done, or just to draw that spirit closer to us, to build a relationship with that spirit, and to continue relationships with spirits by giving them offerings and gifts. Think of it as any relationship. There's a give and take, and offerings are parts of rituals that we set aside the time, the energy, and the food substance or incense to give to these spirits as a thank you for their work done for us. The eighth and final ritual practice is grounding, or returning to a state of equilibrium. So after a magical ritual is done and the subtle force has been collected and the influence of the spirit can be felt, you need to return back to an equilibrium. Of course, banishing and exorcisms may be a part of this practice, as well as releasing of the spirit from the ritual. These are all important practices and aspects of a ritual, but the final activity should be grounding, where one takes any overly potent energy, over-collected energy, and pushes it down back into the earth sphere for it to sort of give a blessing to the physical universe, to the spirits around you, and to the environment. You don't want to hold this extra energy in. It can cause certain mental issues or personality issues, even physical issues, depending on the condensation created. So now that we have gone over the different types of rituals, let's look into the steps in performing a ritual. Before you even begin the ritual, you'll want to examine your initial desire in performing the ritual. What is it that you're after? What is it that you want to occur? And then look at the qualities associated with that desire. What sensations go along with that desire of what it is that you want? What do you want to draw in or invoke? What do you want to evoke? What is it that you wish to remove or banish from your life? All these aspects, sensations, and qualities should be examined and documented so that as you progress through the ritual steps, you have a clear motivation, a clear goal for you to focus your intention and your will on. After you have examined your initial desire, you want to perform some divinations. You want to read your cards or study the magic mirror or crystal ball. You want to review the astrology. When would be the best day and time in order to perform the ritual? You want to put all these things together to give you the best chance of achieving your goal for your purpose. At the very least, you want to make sure you can minimize any bad influences or not perform it on days and times where the astrology would harm or hamper your ritual practice. You could use a variety of methods to analyze the situation and prepare accordingly to combat negative influences and to help maximize the positive influences on the ritual. Once you have all that in place, you'll then want to plan and prepare the ritual. What particular tools or items or paraphernalia may be needed? When will the ritual take place? Where will the ritual take place? Is it a solo operation where it's just you, or is it multiple people? Say someone to scry while another person performs the ritual, or is it a group sort of ritual? All these things need to be put into place. What colors are going to be needed? What sort of attributes does the spirit have, and how can you make that ritual room or ritual environment optimal for the ritual to have the best chance of success? The next step would be purifications. This is a period of time before a ritual to cleanse the mind, the emotions, and the body, to be without influence, especially one that could hinder your working. Of course, banishings are a part of this, as well as exorcisms. You can do ritual baths, meditations, prayers, all to get the influences in your sphere of sensation or your environment completely clear from any sort of influence that you don't want to be a part of your ritual. The next step in performing a ritual is meditation and prayer. This gives you the opportunity to set the intention, connects you with any sort of divine influence that you are drawing in to aid your work, and as a backing or a patron to the ritual. You want to draw in whatever divine influence through the invocations at this step in order to help you in the upcoming ritual. The next step would be to cast the circle, to create a sacred space, a place outside of time and space for you to play the role of the divine in the creation of the universe in order to call spirits and ancestors. This is the time when, once you've cleared the area through your banishings and exorcisms, you're now drawing in the powers and influences of the subtle force to increase the amount of energy and power that you have going into your ritual in order to focus it in, concentrate this power into your goal, into your desire. The seventh step would be to actually perform the ritual. This is where you would do a proper exorcism if what you were doing was trying to remove an influence from your life, or a proper invocation, drawing in the quality desired, drawing in the subtle force or the spirit or the divine power that you actually want to work with. Performing the evocation, calling forth the spirit that will guide, assist, or teach you. Performing Eucharistic magic, taking the subtle force and building it up and condensing it into a common substance to turn it into a more divine, light-filled substance. Consecration, actually setting the purpose of the ritual object or charging the sigil or ritual tool. Or divination, drawing down a god of prophecy or spirit of prophecy for a special message through the tools of divination. And of course, a big part of actually performing the ritual is the experience of as if. In other words, by performing this ritual, you have the innate sense, the faith, the certainty that you are having this experience. It is now part of your life, part of your sphere of sensation, and you have drawn this force, this quality, this attribute that you desire into your life at that moment. So once you've gained the experience of as if during the ritual, and that has been achieved, you want to give thanks to any spirits that may have been involved, any divine forces that you drew in. Give thanks, give offerings or payment to the spirit, and then you want to release the spirits from the ritual space. You don't want to keep the spirits there unless you have drawn in a particular spirit or thought form and condensed it down into a talisman or sigil. At that point, you want to allow the spirit to do its work. So you then close out the ritual by releasing the spirits. Once the ritual has been completed and you've given your thanks and released the spirits, you'll then want to document all the experiences, sensations, and occurrences that occurred during the ritual. What results did you experience while performing the ritual? What was discussed with the spirit? What insights or inspirations you had during the ritual? You want to document all of this into your journal with the date, time, and astrological influences that were present during your ritual. Also, weather influences. You may be surprised about how often you'll have peculiar or unusual weather that occurs during a ritual. At least I've noticed it. So once everything is documented and you feel happy with the information that you've inputted into your journal, you'll want to, of course, ground the energy that has been built up in your sphere of sensation and release that out into the below sphere, from your sphere of sensation out into the earth, and then return to normal consciousness. Some people, of course, do banishings during this point just for extra level of protection to make sure that everything's gone. That's up to you. If you feel a presence or energy still in the room, that would be a good idea to do. But once you have experienced everything, documented, it's time to return to normal consciousness, to normal life. And so there should be a ritual here that allows you to step back in from sacred space into normal everyday space. So the steps that I've described could be tailored to fit someone sitting on a cushion in deep concentration meditation, or in a temple adorned with magical symbols and an altar full of tools. So, which is better? Is there a better? Is it all just what works? Take the Sigil Witch. She can meditate and achieve objectives through sleight of mind and powers of concentration and imagination, using her own creative system. Take the Temple Magician. Having an array of highly charged ritual tools and objects all channeled into potent purpose, he can achieve goals and command the forces of nature. Take the Terrified Newbie. The tension and feeling as if in the power of magic sends their will, guided by mispronounced divine names and words of power they will probably remain forever ignorant of, somehow achieves their goal, although the result may not be exactly as he had hoped. Now take the Enlightened Master. She observes the arising influence of the subtle force towards a desired experience and allows it to move without grasping, thereby freeing it to manifest as the divine will wills it. So which sounds more like your cup of mushroom tea? Or are you one of these trailblazers who will conjure up a more rarefied and aesthetically perfect method to use imagination and will to achieve your goals? I mentioned aesthetics a second ago, and I thought I should kind of explain myself on that word a little bit better. When I use that in particular for ritual purposes or magical purposes, I'm describing the definition of a set of principles that underline or guide the work of a particular artist or artistic movement, or sort of the Hermetic principles of correspondence. In other words, certain divine concepts or ideas are symbolic and also have physical components, flowers and times of day and ways of doing things that relate to that principle or that spiritual concept. I'm not talking about a certain type of internet aesthetic where like goth or whatever. These principles are deeper than that kind of internet meme type culture. So let's use the steps in the ritual to review this episode. First, we examined our desires to perform a ritual. Second, we divined further into how working with concentration and expanded awareness allows us to achieve our objectives in magic. Third, we learned how to plan and prepare to do a ritual, building a quantity of subtle force and creating a thought form of what we wish to experience through our intention and our desire. And we planned on how we would manipulate the subtle force through symbolism in order to achieve it. Fourth, we banished our ignorance and acquired a clear, balanced view of a magical ritual. Fifth, I pray this is all making sense to you, and I humbly beseech you to meditate on these ideas so you may see the light. Sixth, by raising our consciousness above the bounds of time and space, we entered into a sacred space where we could work on the mental realm, the divine light, in order to set the astral influences and forces into motion to manifest our divine will and imagination on the physical plane. Seventh, you have listened to and experienced this episode as a mental Eucharist. You have absorbed the information through your ears into your sphere of sensation. Eighth, I give thanks to you for watching, and I release you to go back to your abodes and habitations. Ninth, if need be, take some notes on insights or ideas you've had during this episode. And final, 10. Until I return again for episode 9, where we ground the heavens and discuss astrotheology, I'm Justin B., and I wish you good magic.